Revenge films.
My name is Emily. I'm 25 years old and just recently got married to the man of my dreams. My husband's name is Kevin. We met because we were colleagues at the same company, and after we dated for about 1 year, he proposed to me and we got married. I'm very happy with my husband. However, we did have one big problem in our marriage, and that was Kevin's mother, my mother-in-law, Karen. When Kevin and I got married, we had agreed that we would start living together with his mother in his family home. My father-in-law had passed away 1 year ago, and Kevin felt bad for his mother to be left alone in the family house, so it was his suggestion that she move in with us. To be honest, I had a hard time getting on board with it, but because my family lived out of state and far away, I wouldn't be able to rely on them if I would ever be pregnant and have kids, and Kevin's mother was the only family nearby.
I want children soon, too. So don't you think that it would be a huge help if my mom is nearby to help us take care of the baby?
And Kevin said that. I couldn't help but agree, and more importantly than that, she said that we didn't need to pay rent if we were going to live at her house, and so I agreed to moving in with the family home. However, we eventually moved in, and I found out that Kevin's mother was quite the pain. The main root of that was the Smith family lived next door to her house. That couple also lived with their mother, and Kevin's mother didn't really get along with her. She always treated the neighbor like she was the biggest enemy and had some kind of rivalry with her. For example, one evening when I was cooking dinner, "Oh, Karen, dinner is going to be ready soon. We're about to have curry tonight." "Curry? There's no way that's acceptable. You need to start over and make something else." What do you mean I need to start over and make something else? Can't you tell by the smell? There's no doubt that the next door neighbor's having beet hot pot for dinner. In that case, we're going to have barbecued beef, so you need to hurry up and prepare that right now. But the curry is already finished, and even if we wanted to have barbecued beef tonight, we don't have the ingredients for that. "Oh, well, in that case, then hurry up and go buy it right now." And in this way, everything was a rivalry with the next-door neighbors. Even though I finished cooking everything, that all I needed to do was put the curry roaks into the pot and complete dinner. In the end, I had to rush to the supermarket to buy all of the ingredients for a completely different dinner and start making everything again from scratch. I later found out that some of the neighbors, that apparently my mother-in-law and Mrs. Smith, used to get along very well back in the day. However, after one tiny little argument, that became the reason for them to be ice-cold with each other for more than half a year now. That being said, Mrs. Smith and her family would never do anything to harass us, and it felt like my mother-in-law was feeling a very one-sided rivalry towards the family. Even the neighbors knew about it and were very concerned. "You married into quite a messy family. Take care of your health and good luck to you." I was really fed up with it, but I was getting by with my life until one day.
Congratulations! You're pregnant!
What? For real? We're pregnant? That was when we discovered that I was pregnant, and Kevin and I were ecstatic. "Hey, Emily, is it true that you're going to have a baby?" "Oh yes, that's right. We found out today." I expected Kevin's mother to be excited with us, but then suddenly she started saying the most outrageous thing. "All right, when you do, you need to give birth ASAP." What do you mean ASAP? That's not possible. I still have months ahead." "Well, it turns out that the neighbor's wife is also pregnant, and so no matter what, you better give birth first before them. You better not lose to them." When we heard that, both Kevin and I were at a loss for words. That was her reaction. We knew that this wasn't a conversation worth having, so we just brushed her off, but even after that day, "You still can't give birth? Oh, come on. What are we going to do if they give birth before you? This is unacceptable. Seriously, how useless could you be?" And she started harassing me about it every single day, and even that the rivalry only became worse once the babies were born. "Hey, did you hear that the neighbors have already gotten their kids to maybe walk? But what about this one? Does it still not talk? Come on, Granny. Say Granny." "Oh, shut up. If you're gonna have the energy to cry, then why don't you talk? Otherwise, you're gonna lose to the neighbors, and that's unacceptable." And in this way, she started roping my newborn daughter, Sarah, into her rivalry with the neighbors. This continued even as Sarah started to get older. "I heard that the neighbor kids started taking piano lessons. Now you need to hurry up and get to the piano."
"What? But I just started swimming lessons the other day."
"That doesn't matter anymore. The neighbor's kids already quit those swimming lessons, didn't they? So you need to hurry up and quit and start playing the piano." And in this way, because my mother-in-law's own selfish competitiveness, Sarah was being thrown around into various lessons. Even though she was finally starting to make friends, she was having to say goodbye to them over and over again and start a new lesson. She was being forced to take lessons when she didn't even want to, and I felt sorry for her. Both Kevin and I tried to reject my mother-in-law's actions many times, but every time it was the same conversation. "I am the landlord and the head of this house, and it's a given that you should follow the orders of the head of the house." And she refused to listen to us. However, around that time that Sarah became became a 4th grader in elementary school, a change finally came. Grandmother over in the Smith family finally passed away. They had a modest funeral for just their immediate family, but my mother-in-law wasn't able to hide her happiness. It was as if she couldn't hold it in inside her, and she kept laughing and was dancing around the house and celebrating. She must have thought that now that Mrs. Smith had passed away, her competition that lasted for years was over and she had won. However, after being flung around by my mother-in-law's selfish competitions for all these years, our entire family was fed up with her. We couldn't let things in like this, or none of us would have felt good about it. That's why our family discussed together and decided to come up with a plan for revenge. Karen, I'm very sorry, but will you please answer the phone? My hands are a little tied right now in the kitchen. What did you just say? I'm busy too, you know. Oh, fine. Yes, hello?
This is XO Funeral Homes at your service. We are contacting you about the inquiry you made the other day about a funeral.
Funeral, you say? What are you talking about?
This is about the inquiry that you made about the funeral for the matriarchy of the family.
What? Matriarchy? You mean me? Oh, yes. I'll take the phone from here. Hello? Thank you for getting back to us. Of course, this phone call was part of our plan. My mother-in-law was just standing there with her eyes wide open, but I continued speaking on the phone to the funeral home staff. Yes, hello, that's correct. Ma'am, what date shall we do it on? The sooner the better, right? So we can schedule it for sometime next week? Are you kidding me? Stop messing around! My mother-in-law panicked, and she snatched the phone out of my hands and hung up the phone. My funeral, you say? What the hell are you thinking? There are some things that you can't joke about, and this is crossing the line. My mother-in-law was yelling at me, and at that moment, Sarah appeared.
But this isn't a joke at all,
Sarah said with a straight face. Sarah, what are you saying? Even you, honey?
Because, Grandma, you always said that you don't want to lose to Mrs. Smith. I heard that when I was about to be born, you were also rushing my mom to give birth to me sooner than what was safe.
No, well, that's,
So that's why, Mrs. Smith passed away first, so you need to hurry up and catch up with her.
Sarah was calm with her words, but it was obvious in her expression that she had quite a lot of anger directed toward her grandmother. My mother-in-law had been using Sarah like a tool in her competition all these years, so there was no doubt that she had a lot of anger built up towards her grandmother.
And you even said to me many times in all these years that you're never going to lose to Mrs. Smith, right? So come on, if you don't hurry up, you're going to be left behind even more and more. When do you want it to be? Should it be tomorrow? I could call the funeral home one more time to tell them the plan for tomorrow.
As soon as Sarah grabbed the phone and lifted it up, my mother-in-law erupted into anger and went crazy. What the hell are you saying? You need to stop messing around too, Sarah. And first of all, you were born into this family, and it's a given that you should be helping the head of the household, which is me. However, this was when Kevin had made his appearance.
That's enough already, Mom! Cut it out!
Kevin? Because Kevin was very firm with her and left no room for her to say anything back, I felt a huge weight off of my shoulders. Kevin is normally a very kind and rarely ever raises his voice, and yet he was furious with his own mother. I figured that should be enough down my mother-in-law, but instead she raised her voice back at Kevin. Shut up! I'm the head of the household, and it's a given that you should follow the orders of the head of the household. She only stood her ground even further. If she wasn't going to budge, there was no way that we were going to be able to reason with her anymore. If she simply sincerely apologized, then we would consider forgiving her for all these years. But that was when Kevin finally let out the words.
In that case, why don't you do what you want? We're going to leave.
Huh? What?
We already have our eyes on a new house as well, so you can just live here by yourself as the head of this household.
After that, we gathered our belongings immediately and we left the house. In the end, my mother-in-law was crying and apologizing to us, but it was already too far late. My mother-in-law's twisted rivalry with Mrs. Smith was already a bad rumor around the neighborhood, and so now everybody in the neighborhood hates her. And I heard that she's living all alone with no friends in that house. She was yelling that she was the head of the household, but now that she was left to live by herself in that house, those words only echoed right back to her. Sarah also said that she never wanted to see her grandma again, and we're living happily in our new home far away from that house, and it's none of our business what happens to her anymore.
My name is Jessica. I had a fellow mom friend named Rachel, and she was a very wealthy fellow mom. Back when she was a student, she was apparently right in the city that was the hardest hit in a massive earthquake, and went through a really difficult time. So nowadays at her parents' house, she has all the necessary goods for evacuation in all cases of an emergency. If you're asking how amazing her preparations were, she already has 10 large tents placed in the backyard so that people could come out and take refuge there in the event of an evacuation. Her backyard was also the size of about 5 normal houses and had normal backyards, and it even had a male and female toilet installed in the backyard. It was to the point where government officials would often stop by and gaze at it multiple times. However, Rachel was generous, and she had, of course, told people around her, but also the people in the local government office that in the event of an emergency, people were more than welcome to come over and evacuate on our property. One day, the weather was a disaster and the heavy rain didn't stop. The winds only started to pick up, and from there, people living in a certain part of the town were told that they needed to self-evacuate to the nearest school or the nearest community center. There was a big commotion around the neighborhood, but Rachel's house sat on top of a hill, so it wasn't nearly affected by the rains, and there was certainly no flooding. So there were a lot of people who went there to evacuate. I lived in the high-rise apartment building, so I didn't need to evacuate, but I received messages from Rachel that day that because there were so many people that came to evacuate in her place, she didn't have enough hands to help, so she was asking me to come help her. So my husband and I jumped into the car and headed towards Rachel's house. When we got to Rachel's house, my husband was taking care of the kids, while I got to work volunteering around Rachel's house. Because the weather outside was really bad, they couldn't pitch tents in the yard, and there were people overflowing Rachel's house. Within that, there were people whose houses had already been flooded, and without any hesitation, Rachel was passing out various food supplies and beverages that she was storing in case of an emergency. Because some of the other moms from the preschool also evacuated there, they were all just happy just to have their kids in a safe place, and the other moms just got up and helped to pass out warm soup to the children and to the elderly. And then everybody ended up staying overnight. However, when the morning came around, the weather had made a turn for the better, and everybody was able to return to their homes. Everything should have been fine, but that was when the big problem occurred. While everybody was heading back towards their houses after evacuating there, because so many people had arrived, and they came into the house after being in the rain and the mud to evacuate, Rachel's house was pretty destroyed with all the mud everywhere. Within the people who had evacuated there was someone who said they wanted to thank Rachel for providing a safe place for them and their families, and some of them stayed behind to volunteer and help clean up Rachel's house to the very last corner. But then, one of the volunteers suddenly went over to Rachel's to get her and bring her attention to a certain part of the house. And then, when we went over there, for some reason, the toilet was broken, and the windows and the bed sheets, and all over the bedroom were destroyed, almost as if someone purposely smeared mud everywhere. This is awful. No matter how hard you tried, none of this should have gotten dirty. It's obvious that the mud was thrown onto the bed purposely as well. And plus, look over there on the sofa of the room. And this room only had so much mud over it that it wouldn't even be able to sit down. Because Rachel had experienced disaster herself and had a lot of regrets about it, she had prepared all kinds of things so that people could help around the community. Otherwise, she wouldn't have prepared 10 large tents, and there also would have been no need for her to prepare some sort of toilets outdoors either. Of course, if you say she has the money to do it, then that might be true, but it wasn't something that anybody would be able to do. It required a lot of care for those around you. And I was irritated that, even though she was helping the community this much, how anybody could possibly do that to her house. Because we were all regular people, and there was only so much that we could clean, in the end, we hired a contractor to come and clean the sofa and bed in the areas that we couldn't get to. That day, a group of us stayed until late into the evening to clean the house, and we thanked Rachel and finally were able to get back to our houses. However, that night, I received a phone call from Rachel. She said that there was something she wanted to talk to me about, so I decided to go back to her house once again. When I arrived to Rachel's home, she was sitting inside and looked deeply upset. "What's the matter, Rachel?" Without saying a word, Rachel pulled out a safety box that clearly held her valuable items in it. And then, when you looked at it at first class, you wouldn't be able to know. When I looked more closely, the lock was broken and everything inside had been stolen.
Inside of this box, I have safely kept jewels that were my grandmother's heirlooms, and also, I watched that I inherited from my grandfather.
What? Have you told the police about it yet?
I haven't said anything, and plus, I was the one that invited everybody over into my house, so...
No, we have to tell the police about this!
But that also means that I have to suspect every single person that came over. And there were a lot of people going in and out of my house yesterday as well, and I don't remember every single person's face either.
That's a good point, because she had opened up her doors for anybody that needed to evacuate yesterday. There were a lot of people whose faces I had never seen before. It made me realize that she had a point that might be difficulty for us to pinpoint any suspect. However, Rachel lost 2 heirlooms from her grandparents, and I could tell that she was really upset about it. I was wondering what I could possibly do about it when I suddenly remembered something from the past. Not too long ago, I remember Rachel saying that she had lost something from her house, and that I was also an expensive luxury item. That time, she said that she may have misplaced it or lost it herself, but she couldn't go file a police report. But, now that I think about it, Karen was here yesterday too, wasn't she? Could it be that she was the one using that room? This woman named Karen is someone who had been pinpointed as what you would call the problem child out of the group of moms. I heard stories about other moms saying that she came over and they had missing items from their house as well.
You're right, she was here, and I have a feeling I remember seeing her going into that room, but how could I possibly prove that she took anything?
That's a good point. If there's an heirloom from your grandmother and grandfather, it must be a pretty vintage item, right? That's why I don't think that if she took it, she would use it. So maybe that she might be thinking of trying to sell it somewhere.
No way! If she sells it off somewhere, then I'll never be able to get them back.
There might be one of the other moms who follows Karen on the resale shop sites, so I'm going to take a look into it. After I said that, Rachel and I split up the work, messaged all of the other moms to see if anybody might know of Karen's account on any of the resale shop items. And we were able to track down her resale account, and when we looked at the product that she put up for sale, just as we expected, we found Rachel's grandparents' heirlooms. That was all the evidence we needed, so we headed straight towards Karen's house to confront her about this. Hey, Karen, you stole the heirlooms from Rachel's house, didn't you? Look at this! This is proof!
What are you saying? Those are my belongings. Stop accusing people of things that sound awful. And more than anything, you don't have any actual proof, so you can't make that up.
If you're going to ask for proof, then I have it. My grandfather's hand watch is the one and only item that has a serial number engraved into it. And of course, I have that serial number memorized. So, can I see it right now?
Of course, there's no way that Karen knew about that. And so, she had a pained look on her face before she sat back down.
Oh, shut up! You're rich anyway, so what's the big deal about losing one or two items?
Those gems. And that are my grandmother and grandfather's heirlooms. Take them down immediately.
I can't believe you would be able to take advantage of Rachel, who provided such an amazing evacuation site for everybody in the middle of a disaster. When I said that, Karen got even more angry.
Oh, every single time you're always trying to show off how rich you are. I've never liked you ever since I met you. Fine, I'll give it back. You'll be happy, right? I'll give it back to you then.
And she said that. Karen went into her room and brought out the gems and watch that she had stolen, and she practically threw them at Rachel.
There you go. We're done now. Right then, hurry up and leave.
I can't believe that she was speaking to Rachel like that. But just as I was about to open my mouth, Rachel shook her head at me. She told me that now that she had the things back, it was fine, and asked us to leave. I was furious, but since Rachel was the actual victim here, she was the one that was saying that I couldn't say anything back. However, a couple days later, Karen was about to get hit heavily by karma. To our disbelief, not only had she stolen jewels and the watch, we found out that the people who had destroyed Rachel's room were actually Karen's children. Even though on that day, Rachel provided everybody with a safe evacuation place, and Karen heard that Rachel's house had become an evacuation spot, she decided on her own hands that Rachel was bragging to everyone about how rich she was, and to make herself feel better, she destroyed the bathroom and she demanded that her children to make it cover the bedroom with mud. However, the kids felt really bad about it. They couldn't hold it in any longer, and they spoke to the sweet grandma and grandpa about it. That reached her husband, and Karen's evil actions were all found out by her family, and she was cornered by both her parents and his parents. Eventually, she showed up to Rachel's house with her husband to her parents to apologize. At that time, I heard that they enclosed plenty of money in the envelope and apologized for the whole ordeal. As for Karen's parents, they were also so embarrassed and got down on their knees to apologize that even though Rachel had provided an evacuation place for the community, that they were embarrassed that this is how their daughter was thanking her. Apparently, even the children were crying and they apologized. The husband was furious that she used her own children in her own evil plan, and he ended up getting a divorce from Karen. Apparently, he got full custody and told her that he's never going to let her see the kids again. I heard that Karen didn't want to agree to the divorce, but he really did legally file for divorce, and she was kicked out of the house. Karen was also disowned by her own parents, and she had no choice but to move into a now sometimes I see her dragging her feet around town meals on sale from a convenience store. I don't have a millimeter of sympathy for Karen, who took advantage of somebody else's kindness and smeared mud all over it. My name is Catherine. I live together with my husband, Thomas Smith. Ever since we got married, I was making pretty normal meals for my husband. Nothing that was extraordinary, but my husband always complimented it and told me it was delicious. After that, I started to put more effort into my meals every single day, and at that point, I'd become pretty good at cooking, if I may say so myself. However, there was a reason why my husband was so complimentary of my cooking, and that was because of his mother. My mother-in-law has always been pretty bad at cooking, and ever since my husband graduated from college and moved out, he rarely ever goes home, and he says that he has been avoiding having meals at his family home ever since. Even whenever they go visit his parents, he always insists on ordering takeout or going out to eat at the restaurant, so I never really had tasted his mother's cooking in all those years of being married. But he even told me many times that it wasn't even edible. It didn't just taste bad. My father-in-law was always a quiet man, and I never had heard him complain about the taste of his wife's cooking. But my husband told me that it was unbearably bad. He wouldn't say a word and just get up from the dinner table and go out to dinner. One day, we decided to invite Thomas's parents over to the house and to host them for a meal. As usual, I put a lot of effort in my cooking, and as everybody was eating it, my husband said out loud,
It's delicious!
Even though my father-in-law rarely ever said his opinions about the food, he was nodding his head as he was eating and also said,
Yes, this tastes great!
I was really happy to see it, and with a smile on my face, I replied thank you. But that my mother-in-law were left alone in the kitchen after the meal, she started harassing me.
What was that all about in the dining room? Just because you were given a little compliment. How pathetic. What? Look at you. You were grinning from ear to ear just because you were given some flattery for the food tasting good. Don't you know the word humility? It's more normal to be humble when somebody gives you a compliment. How do you not know that?
I'm very sorry. I'll be more careful moving forward. She was yelling at me, and even though I didn't understand what I was apologizing. However, I couldn't understand what my mother-in-law was trying to say. And then a few more days after that, my mother-in-law suddenly showed up at my door. Mrs. Smith, what's going on all of a sudden? And with such big luggage as well. If you have contacted me, I would have gone pick you up from your house.
I brought over some cooking that I made at home, so let's have dinner together tonight. When I saw the dishes that my mother-in-law had brought over, my jaw dropped to the ground, and certainly not in a good way. Super thick deep-fried meat was pitch black on the outside but burnt red on the inside. And then there was some random meat stew with all kinds of random ingredients in it. There was also a mountain of salad with a hill chopped onions on top, and no matter how much I tried, none of the food on the menu for the evening looked appetizing. At that time, I feel like I finally understood everything that my husband had told me about his mom's cooking. Even if I was trying to flatter her, there was no way that I could say that she was good at cooking. When my husband came home from work, he saw the terrible-looking dishes on the kitchen table and instantly had a concerned look on his face.
Wait, is this what's for dinner tonight?
That's right. Now let's eat. Thank you so much for this meal. As soon as my husband put one bite into his mouth, he started to complain.
What is this? This tastes horrible. Even though my mom is here, why would you serve something this disgusting? What were you thinking, Catherine?
I remember the words my mother-in-law said to me when she yelled at me that other day, so I chose my words very carefully. I'm very sorry. This is all we had in the fridge. I'm very sorry for making such a terrible dinner. When I said that, my mother-in-law looked uneasy as she tried to turn away from my husband. However, when my husband looked over at her, his face lifted up.
What are you saying? How rude! And Catherine, what do you mean such a terrible dinner? I'm so sorry for cooking you a whole meal and bringing it over for you.
But ma'am, you're the one that told me to say that. You told me to be more humble and not take any compliments.
It depends on the time and place, obviously. I can't believe that you don't even understand that. You truly are terrible, terrible daughter-in-law. I'm going home now. You better not waste that food, do you hear me?
My mother-in-law left the food out there, and then she stormed out of the house furiously. My husband and I thought long and hard about it, but we decided not to waste the food, and so I rearranged my mother-in-law's cooking, and we were somehow able to finish it all. My husband ate his mother's cooking for the first time in years, and it must have been a stark contrast from the meals that he was usually having at home, and so he turned around and thanked me once again for the meals that I was cooking for him every day. And then a couple more days after the incident, one day I called out to my mother-in-law and told to come to the family house by myself. The last time I saw her, she angrily stormed out of the house, so I wanted to make it up with her as soon as possible. But I knew that it was going to be awkward to see her, to be honest. I really didn't want to go. I reluctantly went to show my face at the family home, and my mother-in-law seemed to be in much better mood already. And then she poured a cup of tea for me, and also presented me with some bean mochi, and we sat down to have tea together.
I'm really sorry for snapping at you the other day. I got way too angry.
I am also sorry for speaking about your cooking that way. I'm going to be much more careful with my words from now on.
That's true. Go ahead, eat.
Thank you very much. I was relieved that we were able to make up, so I picked up the bean and mochi and I took one bite, but then, all throughout my mouth, was a rotten smell that I never expected before to wash over my mouth. What is this? To take a closer look at the mochi, I realized that dots were not beans, but in fact, actually mold. Ma'am, when is this mochi from? These black dots are not beans, they're mold, isn't it? When I confronted my mother-in-law about it, she suddenly grinned and she said the most outrageous thing.
This is what you get for being so rude for me when you're my daughter-in-law. Now, if you get an upset stomach here, it's gonna be a pain, so hurry up and leave.
Does that mean you purposely made me eat mochi that was grown mold? This is unbelievable, that's awful!
Just hurry up and get out of here. This is what you get for trying to belittle your mother-in-law. If you understand, you better not speak to me like that ever again. Know your place.
And she said that. As my mother-in-law picked up the shoes that were on the front door, she threw my shoes out the front door. On the way home in my car, I started to feel uneasiness in my stomach, so I rushed to get home as fast as possible. As soon as I got to the house, I was overtaken by the most painful stomach ache, and I was unable to get up from the toilet seat for hours. When my husband came home from work, he saw the state that I was in, and he was worried. And so I decided to explain every last detail of the situation to him. When I did, he was furious.
My mom did that to you? I'll never forgive her for this! I'm gonna go back home and speak to her right now! You don't need to do anything until your stomach feels better, Catherine. So just lay down and relax.
My husband was more furious than I ever seen him before, and he immediately got in his car and headed towards his family house.
Hey, Mom! How dare you do something so awful to Catherine? Because of you, she can't get up because of the stomach pain!
What are you talking about?
Don't try to play dumb with me! She told me everything already! You fed her mochi that was growing mold, didn't you?
I don't know what you're talking about. My mother-in-law was trying to play it off like she was innocent, and then my husband was going crazy out of anger, and they were arguing in loud voices in the house. And it was then that my father-in-law, who had been quiet this whole time, quietly opened his mouth.
The bean mochi? Are you talking about the ones that were left in the cabinet for over 3 months now? That were covered in mold?
My mother-in-law heard her husband speak about it. Suddenly, she was at a loss for words. According to my father-in-law, he was testing her to see if she was going to notice the mochi in the cabinet growing mold, and when his sloppy wife was going to throw it away. When my father-in-law came out with the truth, my mother-in-law was silent and frozen on the spot. Even though my father-in-law was generally a calm and quiet person, he said one last sentence.
Anybody who's going to do something that horrible doesn't need to stay in this house!
He grabbed his wife and plucked her outside the house, and then locked the door in front of her. Honey, open up! Let me in! It wasn't on purpose, I promise! I just made a little bit of a mistake! I'm sorry, I didn't mean to!
I don't care about anybody who's going to keep lying like that!
I'm not lying, it's the truth! Please believe me!
Until you go and apologize to Catherine and she forgives you, don't even think about stepping foot in this house again!
But no way! Please just listen to me! My husband ignored his mother, who was crying and banging on the front door outside, and he came back home. He seemed very happy, and the mother got what she deserved to doing that to me. 2 days later, my stomach was feeling much better, and I was able to regain my daily life. However, ever since that day, I wasn't able to eat mochi anymore, even though it used to be one of my favorite foods. After that, my mother-in-law came over and tried to apologize multiple times, but the mochi incident was traumatic for me, and I told her that I didn't want to see her face anymore. I refused to accept her apology. My husband also told me that I didn't need to interact with his mother anymore, and I felt the big weight off my shoulders. In the end, I became estranged from my mother-in-law and never got to see her again. My father-in-law stood his ground, that until I forgave her, she wasn't allowed in the house, so in the end, she was fully kicked out of the house. I heard that she's been hopping from couch to relatives' homes, and was begging for forgiveness from her husband, who refused to budge. My mother-in-law started to hate me even more for refusing to accept her apology, and when she started sending me long messages and voicemails harassing me even more, when I showed my husband that, he told me that we should block his mom, and he did the same as well. My father-in-law had always been a stubborn person, but he was the type of person that hated liars and people who would cheat, and he said that until I forgave her, he had no intention of letting her back into the house. When my mother-in-law was spending a long period of time a nomad across her relatives, eventually they all became fed up with her and started denying letting her stay. She had nowhere to go, and I heard that she developed neurosis. As for my husband, apparently he really couldn't forgive his mother for what she did to me, and even though he heard that she had no one else and nowhere to go, and was struggling, he didn't have any sympathy for her. I am happy to remain estranged from my mother-in-law and enjoying my life with my husband and father-in-law. My name is Jennifer. I live with my husband Thomas and our daughter Kelly. We're a happy family of 3. My husband's family was pretty close by, about 15 minutes away from us by car, but to tell you the truth, I barely see them. Ever since just before my daughter was born, I stopped going to visit them, and there was a certain incident that became the reason behind that. The incident happened about 2 years ago. While I was pregnant, my husband was about to be sent off on a far business trip, and he told me that I should go spend time with his family at his house so that I could relax. And so, for a few days that he was on a business trip, I was going to stay with them. I got along really well with my mother-in-law back then, and every time I went to go visit them, she was always really kind to me. However, this was the first time I was going to stay over there by myself, so I was a little bit nervous. My heart was beating when I arrived, and perhaps that was foreshadowing of the days to come. Because when I got to their house, without my husband being there, my mother-in-law was like a completely different person. The 3 days that I spent at their house was pure hell. When my husband came home from the business trip and I told him about my time at their house, he was furious and told me that I didn't have to go to see his mother anymore. He also told me that if my mom would contact me, I don't need to answer the phone anytime she called, and I wouldn't answer, and he would call her back on my behalf. With my husband's support, I tried to avoid her as much as possible. As a result of that, even though I was pregnant at the time, my mother-in-law was really terrible to me, and so I tried to avoid her as much as possible. I didn't visit her, nor did I answer her calls. Once I stopped having any contact with my mother-in-law, I was living a stress-free life, even after giving birth, until one day, I got a phone call from my sister-in-law's cell phone. When I answered the phone, to my shock, it was my mother-in-law on the line. "Hello, Jennifer. It's been a long time, hasn't it?" Hello, ma'am. Yes, it's been a while. How can I help you?" Listen. Right now my daughter is pregnant and she is back home, spending her pregnancy here. Is that so? I had decided a long time ago that if I were to ever be in contact with my mother-in-law, that I would get revenge for all those hellish days that I spent with her. And so I had already come up with a number of various plans for that. And at that moment, I recognized that it was my opportunity to put one of the plans into action. And so I decided to put forth my strategy that I had run over and over again in my mind, and that I knew like the back of my hand. Without knowing this at all, my mother-in-law instantly started to complain to me. You need to hurry up and come back over here. My daughter is trying to clean up the house with her stomach. You need to hurry up and come over here in her place to clean the house.
No thank you, do it yourself, you bitch. Just as I had planned, that's what I replied, and I immediately hung up the phone. But then, not even 5 minutes went by, when I just expected, I got another call from my mother-in-law. When I answered, there was an echo in her voice, and so I recognized that she was on speakerphone in a large room. I could already imagine what her plan was. She must have expected me to say something strong again, and that she would try to get the rest of her family to hear me say that. She had done something similar to me in the past, so I immediately knew what was going on. Oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry for suddenly hanging up the phone earlier.
You, what did you just say to me a few minutes ago? Why don't you say it again?
My mother-in-law tried to get me to repeat my words earlier, and so I immediately put on my act and played dumb. What are you talking about? The phone hung up unexpectedly, so I'm not sure where we were in conversation. What's the matter? As I said that nonchalantly, as expected, my mother-in-law started to get pissed off.
Don't play dumb with me. I heard what you said earlier. You called me a witch, and you told me to clean the house, didn't you? You yelled at me.
She had raised her voice at this point, so I was a little bit taken aback, but I continued with my innocent act. Of course, there's no way that I'd ever say such a thing to you.
Don't lie to me. You did it, didn't you? Just be honest and acknowledge.
I never said that. I would never say such a thing.
How dare you keep lying to me?
Do you hate me that much, ma'am? I'm so happy for you that your daughter is pregnant and is going to have children. I'm sure you're going to love that grandchild so much, because you don't adore our child at all, do you? When I started fake crying, it lit another fire with my mother-in-law, and she became even more angry.
What are you talking about? Whatever, just stop crying and hurry up and come over here and help clean the house. Are you saying that you don't care if my daughter has a miscarriage?
I realized that was my only opportunity, and so I decided to stick the nail in the coffin right there. What? Wait a minute, ma'am. Are you trying to do your own biological daughter what you tried to do to me when I was pregnant? You made me move around boxes full of apples without any reason around the house, and then you made me clean the front door in the middle of winter in short sleeves without a jacket. And are you even telling her to go out and buy the most heavy things even though you have plenty in your pantry? When I started talking about all the things that she made me do 2 years ago, my mother-in-law started quietly saying,
"What are you talking about?"
Suddenly, all the aggression that she had just shown just a few seconds ago turned into a quiet mutter. But then, knowing that my father-in-law and sister-in-law had been listening the entire time on speakerphone, I started to hear their voices in the background. Apparently, my mother-in-law had told them, "Jennifer keeps saying the most horrible things, so stay quiet and just listen to this." And after being told that, they had been staying quiet. But when they heard what I had to say, it seemed like they were no longer able to stay silent, and they spoke up. Mom, that's what you were doing? I can't believe this! How are you able to do that to somebody who's pregnant? How evil can you be?
I didn't know that that's the kind of person you were, Karen! Jennifer, can you hear me? We were actually worried about you because recently, you haven't come over to see us at all. If there's anything else that my wife has done to you over the years, please tell me. I'm so sorry.
Took the opportunity and ran with it. I told them everything that my mother-in-law had done to me over the years, and when my father-in-law and sister-in-law found out about the true nature about their mother-in-law, they were furious. I was still on the line, and at that moment they began lecturing her. For a while I was listening in on the conversation, but I could tell that my mother-in-law was silent and becoming depressed, and so I decided to leave the rest of them and I hung up the phone. After that, I heard that my mother-in-law was being treated coldly by the rest of the family, and she was no longer able to stand it, and she decided to move out of the house. We found out when Thomas's father called him to confirm him.
I have a bad feeling about this.
What do you mean you have a bad feeling?
Well, even if my mom leaves the family house, it's not like there's anywhere she can go to. So I'm worried that she might come here.
What do you mean? Just as we were having that conversation, out of nowhere the front doorbell to our house rang.
I bet that's my mom.
But it's already this late at night. I can't imagine that I would be... Do you really think so? My husband and I crept towards the front door, and we slowly cracked open the door. Standing there was none other than my mother.
Mom? What are you doing here this late at night?
Hey, Jennifer, this is all your fault. I was kicked out by my own house because of you. What are you going to do about it?
What do you mean this is my fault? I do believe that you did all of this yourself.
That's right. You should really stop blaming your own mistakes onto other people.
When my husband said that, even though it was already past 9 p.m. at night, my mother-in-law raised her voice and started throwing a tantrum at her front door. She was screaming and yelling about everything that she didn't like about me and how angry she was that my husband wasn't taking her side. After going on a rant and a tantrum, this time she started talking about what was going to happen next.
You two should know that this is all happening because of you, so you need to take responsibility. So you're gonna let me live here until my husband forgives me, isn't that right?
When my husband heard that, without hesitating, he quickly rejected the idea of letting her live with us. But then, that caused my mother-in-law to become even more furious, and she started raising her voice once again. However, it was going to disturb the neighbors, and we didn't want anybody to call the police, so we told her that she needed to leave. But by the time my mother-in-law refused to listen to anything that we were saying, she was only insisting that she was going to live with us for the time being. But my husband was not going to budge. After doing everything that she had done to me, he said that there was no way that he was going to let her anywhere into our property. Thomas stood his ground and he was refusing to let her step into the property. However, but his mother was stubborn, and they were both standing and going back and forth. But at this point, they both had started raising their voices, and even though our daughter had been sleeping inside the house, she woke up from the yelling sounds of my husband and my mother-in-law, and she started crying. Everything was a disaster. But then, very shortly after that, suddenly the police arrived.
We received a notice from somebody in your neighborhood. What's going on here? I'm terribly sorry for causing such a disturbance.
What the hell do the police want? This is none of your business, so just leave. Get the hell out of my face.
Towards this belief, my mother-in-law started yelling at the police, and she was only continuing on with her tantrum in front of them. The police recognized that the root of the problem was her, and seeing that she wasn't going to calm down, and she was only going to continue disturbing the neighbors, the police ended up taking my mother-in-law with them. My husband immediately called his father and informed him that the mother had just been taken in by the police. And then immediately after that, apparently the police also contacted Thomas's father, and so he was going to go all the way to the police station to go pick up his wife. The fact that his wife was in the hands of the police and he tried to go pick her up that late at night, my father-in-law was beyond furious. It wasn't enough just to kick her out of the house at this point, and so he said that he was going to file for the divorce. My mother-in-law was so shocked that she ran out of the house and nobody could contact her. However, no person worried about her, nor did they go find her. Apparently, she ended up all alone with no family around her. After that, my sister-in-law safely gave birth to their second grandchild, and everybody was looking forward to it. Nobody went to go inform Thomas's mother, though, even though I'm sure that she must have been so excited to welcome another grandchild. My mother-in-law was never able to hold the child of her own daughter, so she was going to be left without any family around. Between my father-in-law's Social Security, as well as the fact that he was still helping out with his company's finances, even after retirement, she was living a very, very comfortable life off his salary. But now that she lost all access to that as well, after the divorce went through, she was having to live for herself. As a result of that, she moved into an extremely small apartment, but with the little savings that she had left, she could no longer even pay rent for that, and wasn't able to live alone anymore. According to rumors, I heard that she's living in a dorm these days while working as a janitor to earn money. As for us, the final straw was when she caused a public disturbance and she was taken away by the police, and so we cut off all ties with her. We have no contact with her at all, and we'll never see her again. And of course, both my father-in-law and my sister-in-law were both tired of her behavior, and for the time being, they were both estranged from her. Because of my revenge plan towards her, my mother-in-law was stuck, having to live her retirement years all by herself in loneliness. In the beginning, she was furious with me and seemed like she was never going to forgive me, but after some time had passed, she sent a letter of apology to our house, addressed to me. I wouldn't be able to forgive her that easily for what she had done to me when I was pregnant, but just knowing that she felt guilty about what she did made me feel a little bit better. I doubt that I'll ever have any contact with her ever again in the future, but I have no doubt that my mother-in-law will be just fine, and no matter where she goes with that stubborn, hot-headed personality of hers. I am also extremely grateful to my husband, who always took my side over his birth mom. From now on, I'm going to continue treasuring this husband of mine, and I look forward to being a happy family of 3.
My name is Kevin. I'm in my second year of being a working adult, and I'm just an average full-time office employee. I was known around my company for having a very serious personality, and recently, I was getting a lot of compliments from my bosses, and they were trusting me with bigger projects. I liked my job, but every single day was really busy with work until night. But one day, out of nowhere, I received an invitation for a high school reunion. I hadn't seen my high school classmates since our high school graduation, and I thought it would be nice to see familiar faces again. So without thinking much about it, I decided to RSVP that I'd be attending. And then, on the day of the high school graduation, I was really looking forward to being reunited with my friends for the first time in years. And so, I was really excited as I flew over to the venue for the reunion. However, when I arrived there, for some reason, I saw Gerald there, who was 1 year older than us in high school. In the past, I had some really bitter memories with Gerald, so the moment I noticed that he was there, my mood immediately went down. Gerald and I were both part of the soccer team when we were attending high school together. However, he was the type to always pick on those younger than him, and to relieve his own stress, he was the type to be violent towards others in the shadows when nobody was looking. He was physically, emotionally, and verbally abusive. Hey Kevin, go buy me some cigarettes. What? I don't want to go buy cigarettes. Plus, if the teachers find me, then I'm gonna get into a lot of trouble. You're my junior and I'm the senior. Are you going to go against me? Who do you think you are? Ah! Please stop! Please let me! That hurts! Shut up! This is what you get for going against me! And I'm going to make sure that all of your friends get the same painful treatment as well. If you don't want that, then you better do as I say! Gerald was always particularly violent towards me, and he would stand over me writhing in pain and laugh. But I couldn't say anything, because... You better not say anything to the teachers. If you do, then I'm gonna beat up you and all of your friends again! You hear me? Until Gerald graduated from high school, for all 3 years, I had a terrible time and was always afraid. If possible, I never wanted to see him ever again in my life. However, apparently, one of my classmates who actually got along with Gerald had invited him to our reunion, and unfortunately, I was stuck having to be reunited with him. I wasn't the only one who had been bullied by Gerald in high school. A number of my other classmates had as well, and they all looked upset to see him too. As everyone had started drinking, and things were starting to become more of a party, I started to overhear Gerald speaking in a loud voice and bragging about himself. Well, guess what? I got a job at a major company thanks to my parents' connections, so I have an easy life while getting a really high salary. That means I'm part of the winning team in life. Oh, really, Gerald? That's amazing! I'm so jealous! I bet you are. When you reach my level, you don't have any trouble with women either. It really is the best life. Gerald was obviously speaking loudly so that everybody around him could hear, but I was listening while trying to avoid eye contact. However, out of the corner of my eye, I suddenly saw him get up and he started walking towards me. I had a really bad feeling, so I tried to look even further away, but then Gerald came and sat in the seat directly next to me and looked at me as he was grinning. We were all adults already, so I thought that he had grown up as well and wouldn't do anything problematic. However, that hope was in vain, and Gerald hadn't changed at all. Hey Kevin, long time no see! What are you doing these days? I'm just a normal employee at a company. I bet that means you're a lonely little worker in some small company anyway, right? Oh, I'm out of cigarettes. You better go run to get me some. Gerald hadn't changed at all and thought he could treat me like this, which was tiring to me. And I knew that the last thing I wanted to do was to become this guy's slave. So I said, please, go and buy them yourself. Excuse me? What did you just say to me? Who do you think I am? I'm not trying to say anything at all, but please, go and buy your own things for yourself. By yourself. Are you kidding me? Since when do you think it's okay for you to talk to me like that? Get up! You better come over here! I very quickly rejected Gerald's request, but then he quickly got angry. And on the spot, he punched me in the face twice and then kicked me in the head. Because of that, he broke the skin next to my eye, and I was bleeding from my head. All of the classmates around me started to panic, and there was a huge commotion. It was no longer a reunion party, but instead, I was sent directly to the hospital. I was left with an injury, so I needed stitches. Even though I didn't do anything at all, I was suddenly punched and kicked, and on top of that, I was left with an injury and stitches on my head. Of course, there's no way that I could just forgive him for that, and I knew then and there that I wasn't just going to let this slide by. Because I was furious, in order to collect the medical fees, as well as a settlement fee for what he did to me, I decided to go and speak to the police about it, and I filed an official police report. My classmates that were at the reunion were also worried about me, and they all helped me to look up Gerald's address, as well as his workplace, and they helped me gather the information and turn that into the police as well. Back in high school, I was so scared of Gerald that no matter what he did to me, all I could do was to quietly do as he told me to. But now that I was an adult and had all kinds of experiences, no matter what Gerald did to me now, I had no intention of just sitting by and staying silent about it. It was almost as if time had stopped, and Gerald hadn't grown up at all. He was the exact same bully that he was in high school, But if I just left him to his own devices like this, I knew that there would only be more victims. And so, that's why I also realized that there was a need for me to make sure that justice was served. However, I don't know how Gerald found out or who told him, but one day when I finished work and I walked out of the office, standing outside of the front door and waiting for me was none other than Gerald. When he saw me, he was glaring at me. And as if to make it clear that he was not happy with me, he spat at my feet. When I thought about what he did to me back at the reunion and that I needed stitches, I didn't know what Gerald might do to me now, so just in case, I quickly pulled out my cell phone and I hit the voice recording button before I placed it back into my pocket. Gerald then stood up and started walking towards me, so I put my arms up to get ready for a fight, when suddenly, he grabbed me by the arm. "What are you doing?" "You understand, don't you? You better not file a police report." "Too late. I already did." As soon as I said that, Gerald visibly started to panic. "Why would you do that? Who do you think you are, getting carried away like that? You don't care what happens to the people around you? I'm gonna find everybody you care about!" Threats like that only work while you're still in high school. And if you get arrested by the police, then there's nothing you can do, is there? "The police? Do you think I'm scared of the police? I'm serious! I'm going to destroy all the people around you and stall them into the ground! And you're okay with that, aren't you?" By the way, I'm recording all of this with my cell phone, so I'm gonna go straight to the police now and turn it into them. "Recording? Stop that right now! Give me that phone! Give it to me!" Gerald was furious, and just as I expected, he started throwing hands at me again. "Where's your phone? Do you want to get hurt again? You want to bleed again?" Do you not understand? If you were to do that, it's only going to put you at even more of a disadvantage. "Whatever, I don't care! Give me your phone right now!" As he grabbed me, Gerald and I got into a fist fight on the spot, and Gerald was yelling out loud the whole time, but then bystanders had started gathering, and it became a bit of a scene. Right at that time, by coincidence, my boss from my company came by, and he called the police immediately for me. The police came running, and not long after that, Gerald was arrested and charged for assault. Now that he had a criminal record, Gerald was fired from the company that he got into from his parents' connections. His father was furious, and he disowned Gerald as well. Even though he was bragging about his great lifestyle, he was instantly unemployed. Because he always had a bad habit of spending too much money, he pretty much had nothing in his savings, and after paying the settlement fee and medical expenses to me, he was no longer able to live. So he had to give up his apartment in a luxury high-rise building and move into a tiny run-down apartment. After that, Gerald continued to harass me. I received multiple phone calls and messages from him, all threatening me and trying to bully me once again. So without hesitation, I went straight back to the police and filed another report. Because he had assaulted me twice already, the police immediately went to give Gerald a stern warning and told him that if he ever comes near me again, there will be more severe consequences. I'm sure Gerald doesn't want to be arrested anymore, so after that day, I no longer received any phone calls or messages from him. And then, a few years later, I ended up being reunited with Gerald in the most unexpected way possible. My serious work ethic was highly recognized at work, and eventually, I was promoted to a director title in the company. I now had a team under me, and so, my life had become even busier than before. And then one day, one of the managers from our subsidiary company and one of their lowly employees came to formally greet me. "It's wonderful to see you, Mr. Kevin. Thank you for your business. Today, I brought one of our new hires to meet you." "Nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to serving you." "Wait a minute. Gerald? What are you doing here?" The new employee that the manager of our subsidiary company brought to me was none other than Gerald. By coincidence, Gerald must have gotten a job at a subsidiary company of our large company, and as soon as he saw my face, he started to get flustered and shake. I found out that when he was fired from his previous company, Gerald really struggled to find a job. He was repeatedly taking out loans to survive, and right now, in order to pay back that debt, he's desperately working multiple jobs around the clock. "Oh, do you know each other?" "I guess you could say that." "I'm terribly sorry for what I did to you back then, and the trouble that I caused." "You know, I still have a scar from the injury you gave me that day. See? Look." "I'm so sorry." "You idiot! What the hell did you do?" "Well, I'm sure you can ask him all about it when you get back to your office. But I do hope you are honest about it, Gerald.
Come on, give me a break!
What was that?
Nothing at all, sir!
After that, Gerald was stuck having to bow down to me, and he could barely lift his head to me or even make eye contact, because I knew just how terrible Gerald had been acting until then, especially to those that he deemed to be below him. I made sure to contact the manager from the subsidiary company and tell them to do routine checkups on Gerald to make sure that he wasn't harassing any of his junior colleagues, because I definitely want to avoid anybody having to go through what I did under him. After that, as a director of the parent company, I also kept a close eye on Gerald, and so he was stuck always having to watch his back while he was hanging by a thread to keep his job. How the tables have turned.
My name is Jessica. I live with my husband Thomas Smith and his mother at his family home. The three of us have been living together since we got married. My husband has always been very serious about his work, and he was a disciplined man. But his work was his life, so when things started not to go well at work, he started drowning himself in alcohol. Every night he would drink multiple drinks until he got drunk, and then he would start hurling abusive words at me. I was really troubled by it, but I wasn't able to step in and divorce at that stage. Honey, don't you think you're drinking a bit too much? Maybe you should stop for tonight and go to sleep.
Excuse me? That's none of your business. Shut up and hurry up and go buy me more alcohol right now.
What do you mean go buy more alcohol? It's midnight. I'm going to go to sleep.
Are you telling me that you can't do what I tell you?
Stop it, Thomas, please. Don't raise your voice.
Shut up!
My husband then grabbed an empty glass that was on the table and smashed it against the wall. The glass shattered into multiple pieces and shards of glass flew everywhere.
It's the middle of the night. What on earth is going on here?
Mrs. Smith, please help me. Do something about this.
What's the matter?
I told this woman to go buy me alcohol, but she refuses to listen to me.
It's already midnight. Thomas, please go to sleep.
If you keep raising your voice like that, it's going to disturb the neighbors. What kind of wife are you? You need to listen to what your husband tells you to do. Come on, hurry up and go buy the alcohol.
How can you say that?
And first of all, the only reason why my son is drowning himself in alcohol every single night is because he's stuck with a peasant of a wife like you. I'm sure if he had a more beautiful wife in his life, then he wouldn't be so frustrated all the time. This is your fault, you know. You didn't take responsibility.
That's right, that's right. You should just be grateful that I'm letting a sad woman like you even have a place to stay in this house.
If my husband wasn't drinking alcohol, he was much more calm and kind to me, and I haven't seen the side of him until his drinking got bad. However, my mother-in-law had been harassing me and insulting me ever since I got married to Thomas. I was working part-time at the local grocery store, but I was starting to think that I wanted to work longer hours and pick up more shifts, just so I could get away from my mother-in-law. And then not long after that, in addition to my husband's increasing alcoholism, he started spending money more recklessly, and then he asked me to start working full-time so that I could support his mother together. It was already stressful enough for me to be at home alone with his mother on a day-to-day basis, so I agreed and immediately started looking for a full-time job. It didn't take me long to find one, and as soon as I started working full-time, I also started saving up little by little so that I would be able to run away from this house if I ever needed to. Of course, I kept it a secret from my husband. Every single day when I came to my payday every month, Thomas was asking to borrow money from me, and so I wasn't able to save much every paycheck. However, by the time 2 years passed of by tolerating this life, I realized that I had actually collected a decent amount of money, and with that, I was able to gain a confidence that I would be able to leave the household whenever I needed. And as I was carrying on this lifestyle, noticed that my husband had his cell phone on the living room table, even though he had already gone to work that day. I picked it up with every intention to just deliver his cell phone to the office, but at that very moment, he got a message. That message came from a woman's name, followed by the message that I read, "I won't let you go home tonight." At that very moment, even though I was shocked, immediately realized that if I could gather evidence that my husband was having an affair, then I'd be able to divorce him at a much better advantage than him. And so I took screenshots and sent it to myself. I knew that he was an abusive alcoholic who spent money recklessly, but I didn't know that he was also reckless with this woman. And so I was taken aback. But now that I looked over the past few months, he did have a lot more business trips than he ever did before, and I noticed that he'd been staying overnight, supposedly for work over time more than ever. I was so fed up with this life with my husband and my mother-in-law, so to be honest, deep down inside, I felt lucky. Without knowing anything, my husband ran back in through the front door and grabbed the cell phone and headed straight out. That evening, he claimed that he got a sudden business trip for work and didn't come home. At that moment, I knew for a fact that my husband was indeed having an affair. From that day forward, I secretly started getting more evidence that my husband was cheating on me and began preparing for a divorce. Even if we got a divorce, because my
husband was so pathetic with money, I didn't even think I could count on receiving a settlement fee from him. However, when I thought about everything he said and did to me until then, I couldn't accept just leaving without having any justice, and I thought about any way that I could possibly get back at him. And that was when I decided that when I would be leaving the house, I was going to take all the furniture and household appliances with me and sweep the entire house. If that were to happen, and knowing that neither of them had any essence to the name, I knew that they would be in trouble. In order for me to do that, I repurchased all of the household appliances and furniture under my own name, received receipts with my name clearly written on them as the purchaser of them, and then I got rid of all of the old stuff. Because my husband and his mother had no idea about what I was about to do, it seemed that neither of them thought it was strange that all of the appliances and the furniture in the house had become new over the course of some time. Thanks to that, my plan was going smoothly and I was able to keep planning. When I was finally ready with all my preparations, I confronted Thomas with the evidence of the affair right in front of his mother. Thomas, can you tell me what this is?
What? What the hell is this? Did you take this? How did you get this?
Right now. Now answer me. Honestly. You're having an affair, aren't you?
What else was I supposed to do? There is no way that I would be able to actually love a peasant woman like you. This is all your fault anyway.
I couldn't believe that my husband was getting mad at me, and so I was over it. But then, this time his mother-in-law chimed in and said something even more unreasonable. Having an affair is a simple sign of a man's worthiness, and plus it's your own fault anyway that you don't have any attractiveness as a woman. I was so shocked at the most ridiculous excuse that my mother-in-law decided to say, that I was at a loss for words, and I turned back to Michael. Let's get a divorce already. And when it comes to the settlement fee and the separation of assets, I would be fine if I could take everything that I could prove that I purchased, and I won't ask for anything further.
What? Are you saying that I don't have to pay a settlement fee? Well then, great! Let's get divorced!
Thomas seemed to think that he was getting out with a free pass of not having to pay the settlement fee, and he gladly agreed to the divorce, and then I went straight to my lawyer in order to go through with the divorce, and in the end of the discussion with Thomas and his mother, it was decided that I would be leaving the house, and with that, everything was going according to plan, and I could finally put the last piece into action. That morning, I was going to be moving out. I'm going to be moving out of this house from today. Thank you for all these 3 years.
I don't want to see your face ever again. I'm going to leave. You better not be here when I get back.
When my mother-in-law was out of the house, I called over the contractors and I moved out all of the furniture and appliances from the house. And then the only thing left in the house was an old gas stove and dirty kitchen table. I collected the refrigerator, the washing machine, the stove, the air conditioner, and all of the other household appliances and furniture that were left in the house. And then I put all the receipts that were under my name in the disgusting dining room table. And I got ready to leave and I felt more refreshed in my life. When I knew that I was going to finally be freed from my husband and mother-in-law, I was on cloud 9. Right at the time I was just about to leave, my mother-in-law came back home and she looked around the house, her knees gave out, and she started crying out. What is going on? What is this? My mother-in-law then found the receipts out on the table and it seemed that she figured out all on her own and she was furious.
So this is your doing? How dare you? What do you have against me?
Do you seriously think that I don't? When I asked her in return, my mother-in-law had nothing in response to say to that. Then she immediately called Thomas, who came running back home. When he understood the situation, he became furious.
What the hell is this? What do you think you're doing?
What do you mean? We agreed to this.
But the house is completely empty!
Well, it's much better than being sued for a settlement fee for an affair, isn't it? When I said that, my husband was no longer able to say anything back to me, and I took that moment to officially leave the house. I was finally freed from these two. I had already rented a new apartment for myself, and I was able to start my new life surrounded by my brand new furniture and household appliances. And then I started looking for a job that I could work full-time to support myself. After that, I didn't receive any contact whatsoever from my ex-husband. I went back to their house just one time to get the things that I had forgotten there. And that was when I was learning that he was letting his mistress live at the house. I had actually been discussing with my lawyer previously about collecting a settlement fee from his mistress for an extramarital affair. So I could easily imagine what was going to happen in the near future. Now that I knew who his mistress was, I was able to sue her for an affair and to collect the settlement fees. As soon as I sent over the documents, I received a phone call from my ex-husband.
Hey? What the hell is this about? You said that you wouldn't collect a settlement fee! Were you just trying to trick me?
I didn't collect a settlement fee from you, did I? I'm collecting one from your mistress for destroying my marriage.
Are you kidding me? Everything ended smoothly, so that's why she moved in with me. But now this isn't what we discussed, and she's super pissed off at me. You better take that lawsuit down immediately!
That's none of my business. She's the one that had an affair with a married man. That's her own fault.
What did you just say? You better not underestimate me!
If you're going to raise your voice, then don't contact me anymore. If there's anything you want to talk about from now on, you can just contact my lawyer and discuss it from them. Those were my last words, and then I hung up immediately and blocked my ex-husband's phone number. Because my ex-husband had to repurchase all of the household furniture and appliances, he had used up what little amount he had left in his savings on that. So of course, there's no way that he would be able to pay back his mistress's settlement fee. His mistress was furious that she was getting to be stuck having to pay a large settlement fee, and after getting into a huge fight, I heard that she ended up leaving my ex-husband. Thomas lost all his assets as well as his girlfriend, and I heard that he started to drown himself in alcohol even more, to that point where his even mother was starting to put her hands up. After that, my ex-husband's alcoholism became even worse than before, and he started becoming violent every single night at home. Because of that, his mother went into depression, and I heard that she's now receiving treatment out of the hospital. As for me, I was able to find a new job pretty quickly, and I put the full settlement fee from his mistress into my savings account. I was able to gain a fulfilling life, although the memories of my life with my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law still haunt me. I'm hoping to use that as a good example of what not to do, so that I don't repeat the same mistake in my life again.
I wasn't a very mentally strong person. I suffered from PTSD and mental instability, and I really didn't do well in social situations. And that's why it was terrifying for me to go to my husband, Thomas's family, where they had a lot of customs to abide by. However, my husband didn't understand. He would say things like,
As long as you go over and over again, you'll get used to it, and it won't be scary anymore.
or,
You need to hurry up and learn my mom's flavors, so that she doesn't have to keep teaching you.
and,
This is what it means to be married, so you just need to grow up and tolerate it.
And he didn't have any empathy. If my mother-in-law was a kind person, then perhaps it would have been better. But unfortunately, my mother-in-law seemed to not really care about me. And on top of that, she was a difficult perfectionist. For example, when she made me hang up the laundry for my brother-in-law's family, she would check every single item that was in the wash, and more than once, she would make me redo the entire load of laundry. It would be one thing for her to be less picky with me if we were living together, but I couldn't understand why. Every single time that we would go over and visit the family house, she would make me do laundry or do the cleaning. I also couldn't understand why she was making me do it all by myself instead of asking my nieces and nephews who were just lazing in the living room to help out a little bit. When I tried to talk to my husband about it, he wouldn't take my side.
But you're my wife after all, and the more that you do around here, the more that everybody will like you and think better of you.
And because it was only a couple of hours while I was at their house, I did the best I could that I was told. But then one day, my husband said that we were going over to the family house again. I said I didn't want to go, but then he forced me into the car while we were driving to the family house. I saw some posters around time for fireworks festival that evening, and I had a really bad feeling come over me. Actually, ever since I was a little kid, the sound of fireworks was absolutely terrifying for me, and it was extremely traumatic. Of course, my husband should know that better than anybody, but as soon as we arrived at the family house, it was already decided that we would be going to the fireworks festival. Not only that, but I was told to look after my brother-in-law's child. I was furious, and I pulled my husband aside to talk to him about it, but he only snapped back at me.
Oh, come on, stop making such a big deal out of it. I want my little brother and his wife to feel their excitement of being newlyweds again.
For the record, my brother-in-law and his wife were clearly still all over each other, and not only that, but their son wasn't disciplined at all, and calling him a little monster was generous, because he was so poorly behaved and out of control. Even though I told my husband over and over again that I didn't want to go to the fireworks festival, he kept saying that I would be fine. It was an opportunity for me to get over my trauma, and he simply left me to fend for myself. And not only that, but as soon as the fireworks started, my husband didn't pay any attention to his nephew at all. Instead, he was just having a drink and enjoying watching the fireworks with the rest of the family. During that time, I was shaking from fear out of the sound of the fireworks while also trying to look after my devil of a nephew. He wouldn't listen to a single thing that I said, and he was going around and stealing food from other people or even stealing food from the food stalls, and I was left trying to apologize to all the adults. But when I tried to scold him about it, he would throw a tantrum and he started punching and kicking me all over. And that night, when the fireworks festival was finished and we had gotten home, my brother-in-law and his wife asked their son how their day was, and then the devil nephew told them that I was yelling at him the whole time, so in turn, they became angry with me.
Hey, Jennifer, why can't you look after a kid properly? If something was gonna happen to a sweet boy, you know it's gonna be your fault. If you can't even look after him for a couple hours like this, there's no way that you're going to be able to have kids of your own.
I couldn't believe that I wasn't even getting one single word of thanks. Instead, I was being forced to look after a child, even though I didn't want to. And I was being yelled at for it. I was so furious that I couldn't bear to stand it. After that, I was going through so much shock that I couldn't even remember how I got home. That night, I got over a fever of 100 degrees and I was stuck in bed, and yet...
I can't believe that you would get a fever over just the noise of fireworks. You're seriously so weak. Why can't you be stronger? Can't be that hard.
That was his reaction. And at this very moment, I felt like everything around me has been boiling inside of me blew over the lid, and that was when I finally realized I couldn't take this anymore. That night, I'd spent the entire night suffering from the high fever, but when the morning came around, my fever was gone, and so I immediately packed up all my belongings and I left the house. It was still early and my husband wasn't awake yet. When I left the house, I headed straight to my home. My mother was shocked to see me so early in the morning, with so much luggage with me, and so she called the father as well. Now that I was home, I told my mother everything that had happened to me until then. Of course, about the fireworks festival, but also everything that I went through every single time that I'd have to visit my in-laws' house. For example, I had asthma and I had to go over to the house with my breathing wasn't great, and my mother-in-law told me that I had to go clean outside, then my asthma wouldn't be healed, and then she demanded that I go into the storage room and clean, and there was so much dust there that I couldn't breathe anymore and collapsed. That day, I had been carried to the ambulance at the hospital and was hospitalized for a couple of hours. However, when my husband came to visit me at the hospital, he said,
Why are you so weak? You need to try harder.
By that time, my dad was standing next to my mom and listening, and he started shaking with anger. He told me that I didn't need to go back to my house with my husband anymore. Normally, my father wasn't the type of person to get angry, but I think that incident with the fireworks and the incident of triggering my asthma was the reason why he was so angry. When I was younger, because of my asthma, I had to go to the hospital in an ambulance a number of times. There were instances where it nearly took my life. Even to this day, my parents worry about my asthma. As for the fireworks, when I was a little girl, one of the older cousins was trying to play a prank on me, and he lit a firework right next to my ears, causing severe burns on my body. It took a while for me to regain the hearing in my ear, and because I had a firework so close, I became terrified of them. That's why when Thomas proposed to me and went to meet my parents, they had warned my husband to especially be careful of fireworks, knowing that there are fireworks festivals every year, but it seemed that my husband never took it seriously and never thought the fireworks as a big deal. As I was explaining all of it to my parents, my husband must have woken up and realized that I wasn't home, and he was calling me. So I picked up and told him that I was back home with my parents rethinking our marriage. But then my husband was pissed off, saying that what was there to think about when it came to our marriage? And he started pressuring me and demanded that I hurry up and come back home. As soon as I hung up the phone, my mom and dad looked at me and asked me what I was planning to do. I could tell that both of my parents were furious, but because it was a marriage, I knew that they were going to respect my opinion and let me make the decision for myself. That's why I decided to take a couple of days to really think about it for myself. During that time, my husband contacted me multiple times. Apparently, while my mother-in-law was looking after her grandchildren, she threw out her back, and so my husband demanded that I hurry up and come home so that I could help out with the chores around the house and clean up after them. I couldn't believe that my husband really didn't understand why I was back home with my parents, and I was over it. But then my husband continued that because my mother-in-law had been disciplining me all the time, that's the only reason why I was useful nowadays. And he told me that it was pointless if I didn't help them out now. That was when I made my decision. And then I told my parents that I was going to be divorced from Thomas. They told me that they would help me hire a lawyer, and so I took their help. Either way, I'd have to go home once to at least gather my belongings, and I needed to discuss further with my husband. And so I went home. My husband was at work, and so I called the moving company and asked to take everything that was mine within a day. And then, that evening, my husband came home from work. As soon as he saw my face, he lit up.
So, do you finally understand? You better get to my mom's house first thing tomorrow morning and help her.
There's no need for that, Thomas, because I'm going to get a divorce from you. I've already taken everything out of my personal belongings, and by the end of this month, I'm going to be rid of this apartment.
What?
You didn't hear me? I said that I'm going to get a divorce from you. I've had enough of being thrown around by you and your family, and what happiness am I going to find being with a husband who refuses to show any care towards me? That's why we're getting a divorce.
Wait a minute, Jennifer. But you said that you were going to try, didn't you? And we spoke about this, that as long as you try harder, eventually, my mom will acknowledge and accept you.
Why should I have to continue being treated like this and bullied like this, just to have your mother accept me? By the way that she treats me, she's never going to acknowledge me as part of the family. I've already moved all of my belongings from the apartment, so you better arrange to have your stuff moved out too.
But why?
Did you forget? This apartment belongs to my father. And also, did you forget that your car that you drive also belongs to my father? When I said that, all of my blood drained from my husband's face. My husband seemed to forget that when he got married, my father had purchased an apartment for us, and he also received the keys of the car that he wanted, which was my dad's car. Look, if they were good to me, I'd be happy to cater to them. Well, why should I have to cater to people who only bully me every single time? I can't stand it anymore. We're getting a divorce, and that's that. And after that, I never saw my husband ever again. I hired a lawyer and went through with the divorce. Of course, I collected an apartment and the car and everything else that was mine. On top of that, the job that my husband had was thanks to my dad's introduction. When my father told them about the divorce and the reason behind it, the company immediately relegated Thomas, who was pretty useless to begin with. Even after telling me to cater to his family, he was the only one benefiting so much from my father's help. It seemed that he finally understood, and every single day he was trying to send me messages, but I ignored them all. Because of the help from my father, he was able to save more money for his salary and send money back to his parents. But now that that was gone, I heard that their family finances are on fire and that they are living their lives in debt. Seriously, take that!
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.